So with that being said, I want to start by thanking everybody. Josh, everybody admires your bravery. And I also want to thank Dr. Maggie Schneider. Maggie Schneider is a physician. She's an attending psychiatrist at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at Boston's Children's Hospital. She's also an instructor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. I could read more and more of her credentials, but it would take far too long. And I think what's more important is what she has to say. So we're going to begin this meeting by turning things over to Dr. Maggie Schneider.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. As you said, I'm Maggie Schneider, and there's a couple of things that I have to say at the beginning of this, just to meet compliance things for where I work. So the first is that while I work at Boston Children's and Harvard Medical School, I don't speak for Boston Children's or Harvard Medical School. I'm speaking for myself. And then while I'm going to talk about a lot of treatments that are available tonight and ways to access treatments, all this stuff is for general education and awareness, and it's not formal medical advice for any of you because I don't know your stories and I'm not your doctor. That being said, I'm incredibly excited to be here. And the first thing that I want to say is that I am excited to see so many people, so many other faces here in people's lives that have been affected by addiction. And I want to be fully upfront that I belong in this meeting not just as the guest speaker, but as someone whose life has been profoundly impacted by addiction. Both my dad and my brother had serious mental health and substance use issues, and both of them died as a result of those problems. And those losses are something that I feel every day. I miss them every day. And the experience of being my dad's daughter and my brother's sister has a really big impact on who I am as a person, but also who I am as a psychiatrist and how I approach the work that I do. So I think it's something that I have to kind of lead with because it's an important part of who I've become. I also have the incredible good fortune to have a number of friends and family members that are in recovery and really thriving in recovery and leading full, fabulous lives after struggling with addiction. And they are such an incredible inspiration to me and such a wonderful force that I think for good in the whole world that makes me a better physician and a better scientist because I have seen the wonderful things that can come after recovery and can hold that hope for my patients and their families when I'm dealing with them. I'm gonna try to talk a little bit about some issues around getting treatment for substance use and treatment and interventions not just for the person that's struggling themselves, but also for the friends and family members of someone that's struggling with substance use, because I think that the availability of resources for friends and family members who are referred to in the literature as concerned others is something that a lot of people aren't aware of and that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of, but that can have a really profound impact both on the person and on the course of the substance use treatment of the person that they care about and the person they love about. I do want to start with some numbers, and I strongly suspect that no one on this call needs me to give you numbers to understand how profound the impact of addiction can be. But I also know that stigma and isolation and concerns around these issues can make people feel very alone and very isolated when they're struggling with them. And sometimes concrete numbers can help in overcoming those issues and overcoming those feelings. I also think that community events like this can be a tremendous help in overcoming those issues and overcoming those feelings, which is another one of the reasons why I'm so glad that everyone's here tonight. So some numbers to kind of make it concrete. Our most recent national survey was in 2021, and at that time, 16.5% of the US population over 12 years old met criteria for a substance use disorder in the last year. So that's about 50 million Americans. So that's a huge number. And 94% of those people had not received any treatment at the time of the survey. So it's both a huge number and a huge gap that I hope some of the information and the resources that we're providing tonight can help close a little bit. because I think closing that gap is one of the biggest things we can do for the health of people in this country, and one of the biggest struggles that we have. In the most recent World Health Organization data, which I think is from 2019, the consequences of drug use was the #7 cause of mortality for Americans overall, and it's the #1 cause of mortality for people between 20 and 50, and also the #1 cause of loss of productivity and loss of quality of life. So that's the huge impact that drug use is having on the people that are struggling with substance use and addiction. Um, but they also have the profound effect on the health and well-being of the people that care about people that are struggling with substance use addiction. And that, unfortunately, is most Americans. Depending upon what study you look at, between 2/3 and 3/4 of American families have at least one member who has met criteria for either a substance use disorder, addiction, had an overdose, or had problematic substance use. So most people, most Americans are dealing with these issues in one form or another. And I hope that hearing that statistic, while I think it's very sobering and very sad, I also hope that it helps people understand how completely not alone we are when we're dealing with these issues. Because I really say all of this to drive home that we're not alone. The While the majority of research looking at concerned others has focused on family members, I think that a lot of it extends to friends and other people involved in the lives of people that are struggling with substance use, especially as our modern definitions of family grow and change in beautiful ways. And so there is really solid research that tells us that people that are struggling, people that love someone that's struggling with substance use, have higher physical health problems, higher mental health problems, higher cost of mental health care and physical health care, and lower quality of life than the few people that aren't dealing with those issues. Um, and and so that impact that all of you guys are feeling, whether you're someone that's struggled with addiction or someone that is struggling to help someone you love with addiction, that impact is real. It's demonstrated by science, and it's not something that we should ignore. It's something that we should be being very active in engaging with and trying to improve. And I hope that some of the things I say tonight will be able to help people engage with options around that. So the good news is that while the majority of people don't receive treatment, that doesn't mean that treatment is not available, even though I think it very often feels that way. And different options and different treatment options work for different people, but finding a treatment provider can be a real challenge. And so I've put together a group of resources that will be gradually sharing, I think both in the chat, we'll post it on the Patreon available to everyone after, we'll post it on the Discord. These resources are going to be listed every place we can think of listing them, because I want people to be able to find the things they need and to be able to find the resources that are going to work for them. One thing that I do want to say, just as a physician, is that there's been tremendous progress in the last 5 to 10 years on medication-assisted treatment for people that are struggling with addiction, especially in the areas of opiate use and alcohol use disorder, but also in other areas. And there's a really good body of research that suggests that people do better when they are seeing a physician and getting medication to help them with their recovery, especially in the early stages. And I think a lot of people struggle with understanding that. And while it's definitely outside the scope of 15 minutes in this meeting for me to list all of the medications and their options, I do really want to emphasize that medications are a great option for a lot of people and can be really life-saving and really incredible support in helping people get through recovery, especially in early recovery, but even for years and years going through treatment. And that probably those things combined with the more traditional behavioral treatments that a lot of people are aware of is probably more effective than just the behavioral treatment alone. So like I said, the document that I put together has a lot of different resources for finding both formal treatment and support, and for finding like support groups and more informal support, both of which I think can be really helpful. But there's also a really good body of research that I think far fewer people are aware of about the impact of interventions to support concerned others, to support the family members and friends and loved ones of people that are struggling with addiction. It's an area that I find a lot of people don't know anything about, and I think it's a wildly underused resource. And the great thing is that while a lot of these programs are targeted at the friends and families of people that are struggling, the research really supports the idea that utilizing these resources as someone who loves someone that struggles with addiction will actually improve the probability that the person you care about with the addictive illness gets the treatment they need and has good outcomes from the treatment they need. So people with substance use disorders have better outcomes when we do interventions to improve the functioning and communication of the people around them. And those resources are incredibly underutilized. So we'll provide a lot of links to different things about that. The one that I want to say a little bit about specifically is called CRAFT. That's the one that has the most studies, and it stands for, and I always have to look at this because I can never remember, the Community Reinforcement Approach and Family Training. And the thing that CRAFT and most of the other evidence-based interventions for families have in common is that they're very focused on effective communication and effective navigating relationship challenges and effective coping mechanisms for high emotional situations that often take place in these situations. So they're really focused on improving the communication and the relationship between the person that loves the person that's struggling and the person that's struggling. And those relationships have an incredible impact on that, on the whether or not someone engages with treatment and whether or not someone does well in treatment. And I think that very often, and I think probably a lot of people here have gone through this, there are moments, and I know I've gone through it with my dad and with my brother, there are moments when the communication kind of just breaks down and when you don't know what to do and you don't know what to say. And these formal training interventions can be incredibly helpful for how to deal with these difficult moments in using mechanisms that have been studied and validated and practiced and gone over in all sorts of different kinds of research and interventions. The overall body of research says that like formal training that's a combination of individual therapy and group therapy is the most effective way to do these interventions. But the good news is that the online and like self-help book versions of them also have evidence for being way more effective than not engaging with them. And so we've got links to a couple of websites that have access to online training, some free, some paid. And I'm not going to endorse any particular one. We've got a couple of different links. The one that I will say like actually has scientific evidence behind it as a self-help intervention is the book that's called Get Your Loved One Sober, and we'll put a link to it. That one actually was used as an active control in a couple of studies and was found to increase the treatment uptake and the functioning, the treatment uptake of the person that the person doing the intervention cared about and the functioning of the person doing the intervention. And then the last thing I just want to make sure that everybody kind of has an understanding of and that they know that I'm here to answer questions about is that there are emergency interventions that are accessible to everyone that we can all provide to someone that experiences an opioid overdose. And it's naloxone or Narcan really unambiguously saves lives. And one of the biggest things that we can do to help people stay alive when they're struggling with opioid addiction is be prepared to respond to overdoses. Because unfortunately, the reality of today's supplies of these substances is that they are incredibly often contaminated with fentanyl. A study I read this week said the majority of people that use any illicit drugs that were tested in New York City tested positive for fentanyl in the last 6 months. So not just people that are using opioids, people that think that they're using cocaine and think that they're using LSD are testing positive for fentanyl. So it's incredibly prevalent and incredibly dangerous, and Narcan unambiguously saves lives. So I've also provided some links to information about how to get free online training. Yes, Cecilia, I see your Narcan box. I love it. To get training on how to use Narcan and how to recognize when you need to use Narcan, and a link that gives you the laws in every single state, because unfortunately they do vary state to state, and links to a resource that will help you figure out where you can get your own Narcan kit once you learn how to use it, because you absolutely can save someone's life. And I think being aware of that is probably one of the biggest things that I can hand to you guys as a group. That's it for what I had formally prepared of the things I wanted to highlight. I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure is that you guys all get access to these resources. So like I said, we'll make sure they'll post some of the links in the chat, and then we'll also be posting them on the Discord and posting them on the Patreon page. But I'm also happy to answer questions about specific resources. I've got my whole little spreadsheet here. I'm going to pull over now so I can see it. And happy to answer other questions about kind of like what's available or what's it like. But also really want to hear from people, because I think one of the biggest things that's been impactful for me is sharing my experience as the sister and daughter and friend and relative of people that have struggled with addiction, and the different aspects of that experience that have really shaped who I am as a person and how I approach all this stuff that allows me to talk about it.
Wow, amazing. Before I open the floor to comments and questions from everybody else, I'll ask Josh first. Josh, do you have any questions for Dr. Schneider?
I mean, I don't know that I have questions, but I do just want to extend a really heartfelt thank you to Dr. Schneider. You're obviously a wealth of knowledge. I think even though this is our kickoff meeting, I think we'd be hard pressed to find a better speaker. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be here. So
Yeah, what a thrill for us. And you're incredible. I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around the numbers. Believe it or not, I read things all the time, but having a doctor tell you the numbers, they're really staggering. Uh, and yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be asking you a lot of questions in the future about a lot of these programs. And this is what I mean about gathering knowledge. I got like a true old guy. I got my pen and my paper and I'm writing things down. Craft sounds uh exceptionally interesting, and that's important. When we were putting the idea of a meeting together, we wanted to stress that this was as much for friends and families of addicts as the addicts themselves. But I'm hoping that we can reach addicts, obviously, and I think in the coming months we're going to make sure that the door that addicts out there know that the door is open for them. But I'm really curious to hear from the people that we got here today. I do enough talking, so I'm going to shut up, and I want to hear from you guys. And if I have something to chime in with, I certainly will chime in. And I'm sure in the coming weeks and months, Maggie, I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. So just thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. You're really kind, and I appreciate you sharing the really sad news about your family members. Really, I appreciate you opening up and sharing that with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You're incredible.